Alright. What's up mga kachimek? No, yan, parang vlogger lang si Sir Jello. So, from now on, during our asynchronous session, if I'll be sending video, I'll be referring to you as mga chimek. Bakit mga chimek? Yan, comment down below sa aking post kung bakit mga chimek ang tawag sa inyo. So, ulitin natin. What's up mga chimek? For today's session, here are our objectives for today. No? First things first, we'll try to redefine matter. Identify the phases of matter. So we already discussed this on our first synchronous session. So this will be a mere recap. However, the activities I gave you was about classifying properties of matter. And at the same time, I'll be teaching you as well, or I'll be lecturing as well, how to distinguish the changes in matter. So I want you not to sleep. No, I want you to bear with me as we proceed along with our chemistry. Sabay insert intro. Ching 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 ching. Right. No? Yan. So this is an old PowerPoint. So medyo ang transition natin is medyo mabagal pa. So as we discussed, we try to redefine matter. Why do I always emphasize the word redefining? Because, as I've mentioned, even in elementary and in high school, the matter has been defined to us as anything that occupies space and has a mass. Whereas, now let me use highlighter here, the one that we are referring there as anything that the space occupied rather is a volume. So when we are defining something, we try to define it or to describe it as simplest as possible, as simple as possible. So matter now, as we redefine it, is anything that has mass and volume. Meaning, how would I know that if something matters? No? Nagmamatter ba sa'yo yung mahal mo, di ba? Or nagmamatter ka ba sa crush mo? No? Just ask yourself, do I have a mass? Do I have a volume? If you have both, kailangan lang nandyan pareho kasi pag may isang wala, that's not a matter anymore. Technically, if you matter to him or her, or technically rather, you matter to him or her because you have both mass and volume. So don't you worry, I got you. And I'm telling you, you matter to your crush. Well, at least in chemist perspective, in our chimek. So mga chimek natin dyan. Alright, matter does not necessarily means human or animals. It includes both non-living and non-living and things that we cannot see as well. Later on, as we give some examples, we will try to distinguish the matters that can be seen and the matters that cannot be seen. So, technically, everything around us. However, let me remove my camera there. Alright, sorry for the technical error. Nakaka-distract kasi ang kapugian ni Sir Jello. Char lang. So, various forms of energy, such as heat, light, and electricity, are not considered to be matter. We discussed this already. But let me ask you again. In order to become a matter, you need to have both mass and volume. These examples here does not acquire mass nor volume, or both or neither. So, dapat parehas yung dalawang criteria nasa iyo. So, right. We also described that matter, the atom rather, is the simplest form of matter or the building block. Every matter is made up of tiny little things we call atom. In our next discussion, in our next chapter to discuss, we'll talk a lot more about atom, the discovery of atom, the structures, and so on and so forth. So for this juncture, just remember that matter is made up of tiny little things we call atom. So these are some examples. If you're unfamiliar with some matter around us, ipaikot-ikotin ko lang yung video ko dito sa screen capturing device. Kasi gano'n naman talaga sanay naman tayong pinapaikot. Char lang. Anyways, now we also discuss some states of matter. So common, the gas, liquid, and then solid. Binaliktad ko naman. para maiba naman ang pattern natin. Yan. So, when we say face, it's simply kasi iba-iba yung ginagamit na term natin, no? Face, state, these two are the same, no? We can use this interchangeably. However, there are other terms which we associate to matter that we don't want to interchange, no? Or we don't want to use on a different way. So, therefore, when we talk about phases and states of matter, we are actually talking, let me use again the highlighter here, and let me use a blue one, how molecules, or specifically the atoms, are arranged in particular order. Paano sila inayos, paano yung itsura nila kapag we'll have the chance to look at them microscopically. So that's how phases of matter, no? How we use the word phase or state of matter. We're actually talking about the arrangement of the atoms in a particular matter. So, sabi ko nga, 'di ba? If you're an ordinary student, you look at ice, liquid and gas like this one, no? Sobrang init na, kailangan ko ng ice. Yan, char. So, ganun yung pagtingin natin sa mga bagay-bagay. But no, tayong mga chimek, panggap na chimek din kahit physicist talaga or physics major. No? Pero tayong mga chimek, hindi dapat ganito ang pagtingin natin sa mga atoms. Paano? Later, makikita natin, i-visualize natin kung paano natin tinitingnan ang mga phases of matter. So, in solid, again, recap na lang to kasi this has been discussed to you over and over again by your teachers, no, in elementary and in high school. No, so, solid are either crystalline and amorphous. So, what do we mean by that? Sige. Ask me. Of course, you cannot reply, no? Alright, thank you for asking in your brain. Si crystalline, no, si X ko siya. Yeah, char lang. Wala akong X na nagngangalang crystalline. So, when we say crystalline, there are specific shape, no? There is rather a specific shape about for a particular solid, no? Halimbawa, if again we can look at it microscopically, like a diamond, no, that's a perfect example of a crystalline. Or if you haven't seen a diamond, even a salt, these are crystalline solids, meaning the structure have a perfect shape, have a perfect arrangement, no, or rigid arrangement. However, on the other hand, no, when we say amorphous, parang medyo flexible siya, no. The shape is not, or the structure itself in a microscopic level is flexible, like halimbawa rubber, no, that's a good example of an amorphous solid. And also we discussed it has a definite shape and a definite volume most of the time, and then low compressibility and high density. So sabi ko nga, I will no longer elaborate on it, but just a reminder, try compressing your table, no? I can compress my table. Seemingly, it's not compressible, but in a microscopic level, the compressibility is very low. The atoms are actually pushing the atoms. Each atoms are being compressed, at least in a very little manner. That's why we call it low compressibility. High density naman, kapag lumubog siya or it settles at the bottom, ito na lang yung pinakamadali, though it's not technically right to say that. No, again, remember the arrangement in the sea. Solid, like rock, sand, settles at the bottom because they are the most dense. No, they are the solid, the most dense. And then, liquid, the water, no, it lies in the bottom. No, sana all nakaka-swim, or in the middle rather. And above are the gases. So that's how we describe solid. Definite shape, volume, compressibility, and density. Alright, so why are we talking about it? Later, sa properties, no, we'll appreciate these terms. Alright, let's proceed. What's the next slide? So yan, I kept on elaborating. Meron pala dito sa next slide. I apologize for the text because the background is white as the text is white. Anyways, this is a trial, no, of your eyesight. No? Kung may problem ka sa pagtingin dito, yan, huwag kang magreklamo kung wala siyang pagtingin sa'yo. Char lang. Mga rason lang si sir. And sinecheck ko lang para hindi pa rin kayo tulog. Or baka tulog na kayo. Basta nabubuhay kayo sa ating, what's up DJ Jello? What's up Papa Jello? What's up mga chimek? Alright. Sige. Masyado na tayong nagsisegue. So again, amorphous, there's a random form kasi they are flexible nga, just like the rubber. If you can see, stretchable, like si Sir Jello, di ba? A, S, C, I'm a cheer dancer before, no? Nung di pa mataba si Sir Jello. While crystalline, they're arranged in an orderly, rigid 3D network. No, may example din, plastic or rubber, semiconductors like metals, ceramic materials, and crystals for the crystalline. So these are two classification of a solid. Sa liquid naman, on the other hand, they do not have a definite shape. Ulit-ulit to. Lagi. I don't know if it's the same to you. When we hear the word liquid, occupies the space of the container. So if you place the liquid in a pail of water, Jack and Jill will went up the hill. Char lang. Of course, it will occupy the shape of the pail. No? If you put it in a tray, a box, no? Of course, it will be rectangular or it will shape like that box. No? Kumbaga, mapagbalat kayo si liquid. No? It adapts to the container. No? It occupies the container and assume the shape of its container because it is flowing. However, the volume of the liquid is definite, meaning it does not change. So, minsan, natitripan tayo, diba? There are optical illusions. When we when we are actually pouring Coke, hala, mas dakula, or mas dakol kay Tugang, kay Kuya, mas labgar siya. Pero when you transfer it to a separate container, ay, pares man lang palan. Diba? Though we change the container, the volume of the liquid will not change. May mga pilosopo dyan minsan, sir, di ba may nawawalat duman na very minimal, no? Pero in general, di ba matalino ka duman kung naisip mo to, na may mga natatadang liquid duman sa previous container. Pero in general, the volume of the liquid does not change. It is definite. Di ba? Sana all hindi nagbabago. Alright. It flows freely but it has low compressibility. So, yan. Again nga, flexible si water. It go with the flow. Para siyang yung kaibigan mong taraji. Lagi lang siyang, sige pre, let's go. I can adapt anywhere with Boracay Ram. And then, low compressibility. So, same with solid. Tendency kasi kapag low si solid, sunod na parang high na. No, they are the same. And again, a very good example that you should try at home without other people seeing you. Try to compress water, no, in your CR or in just a pail of water, no, or in a tub of water. Try to compress it. If you can compress it, congrats! Sabihin mo salamat, Shopee. Alright. Comparing their density, liquid has lower density than solid, no? Because of the arrangement of the molecules of the liquid, its mass is relatively smaller as compared to the solid kung sa volume if their volume is constant, resulting to a lower density. So technically, if you arrange a solid and liquid, most of the time, I'm not saying all, the solid will go down or will settle at the bottom because it is denser than the liquid. Alright, again, most of the time or in general. And lastly, of course, we have the gas. The molecules of gas, unlike solid, which are compact, and liquid na medyo close to each other, the molecules of gas or the atoms of gases are actually a bit separated. No? Magkakahiwalay sila. Social distancing. Si gas, ayaw nilang magkakatabi kasi baka magka-corona. Therefore, since magkakahiwalay sila, ayan, hindi nyo pa yung nakikita pero nakikita ko na yan sa molecules ng air. Ayan, may oxygen, carbon dioxide. Sige, baliw na si Sir Jello. Pero yan, because of that reasoning, or because of that arrangement, we can actually compress them. And as I've mentioned, we have the gasol, aerosol sprays, balloons that can be compressed, di ba? Pag bored ka, magpapararog ka lang kayo ng balloon. Don't imagine anything. It's a balloon that for release my stress and tension. And then, unlike solid, which has definite volume and definite shape, gases has no definite shape and no definite volume because of its arrangement. Result to the phase or state of a gas, the arrangement. And the movement, some books would say it is flowing as well. While other they're in constant motion, and the term used is they are constantly escaping. So gusto nilang kumawala sa mundong mapanakit na. Charot lang. They are constantly escaping. That's why when you try to pinch a hole in a balloon or try to open something full of gases, it will brrrr, brrrr. Diba? Even our utot, diba? Our utot are gas, no? They're methane. So they want to escape. So, diba? Ganon. Para lang naalala natin ang motion ni gases. Utot. They want to escape. Alright. Huwag niyo akong pagtatawanan na. Huwag niyo akong ibabash. Alright. So, sabi ko nga, mga chimek, no? Kailangan iba ang pagtingin natin sa mga bagay-bagay. Diba? We look at the deeper side of everything. We look we dig deeper than the superficial. Kasi, mga ano tayo? Tayo ay mga chimek! Alright. So, when you look at a solid, no, ganito yung arrangement niya. So, an ice is an example of a crystalline solid na may structure. While gas, or liquid, di ko alam kung bakit nasa gitna si gas. Gusto nila ata ni solid as liquid, may namamagitan sa kanila. Sana all. Charot. Ano pinagsasabi mo, Sir Jello? So, sa liquid, medyo connected pa sila. Kumbaga, kung dito sa solid, group hug! Right? Ng mga panahon pwede pa ang group hug. Sa liquid naman, our father lang, tatabi ka lang kay crush. Alright, hawak tayo, pero hindi ganun kahigpit. Well, si gas, LQ sila. Walang bati-bati tayo, pabibo ka sa klase, so hindi kita kakausapin. Lahat pabibo, so wala nag-uusap-usap. So, yan. That's how you check the arrangement. And other reason, bakit sila ganyan? No? Some theorists or some scientists suggested they are arranged like that because simply of the temperature around them. Like solid, di ba pag malamig, syempre gusto mo may kakadal ka, may kayakap. Di ba? Kung mag-isa ka lang, yakapin mo sarili mo. Ay, sad naman nun. Or yakapin mo ang iyong unan. Yan. Yan, ikadal mo ang unan or yan, basta mag-compress, 'di ba? Magkatabi-tabi. Pag medyo average lang, chill lang, hindi masyadong mainit, hindi masyadong malamig. Okay, pwede tayo mag-mingle, pero di naman tayo magiging magkadikit, no? Kasi mainitan tayo. So that's when the temperature rises as compared to the solid. And when you increase the temperature more, the tendency, pare, ang init. Rayo-rayo ka, manasako, tama, arasahason. So that's how gas works, no? As we increase the temperature, they tend to separate, no? Init lang pala ang magpapahiwalay sa kanila. Unlike relationship, 'di ba? Pag lumamig tsaka maghihiwalay. Pero hindi 'yun sa atin kasi tayo ay mga chimek. Ginagawa mo, Sir Jello. All right. Then we also discussed the particulate nature of matter, or how matter works, how matter moves, how matter interacts. I already elaborated this one, but again, for the sake of those who are not listening during the discussion, let me repeat. Now, we believe on the law of repetition. We repeat the discussion until you've mastered it. No? And then, first, all matter is made up of tiny particles. We call... Very good! Ang galing-galing naman ng mga chimek natin. Kahit walang reply, Dora Explorer lang. It is made up of atoms. And then... Nakilagyan ako kay Papa. Alright. And then, there are spaces in between particles. So, sabi ko, even solid are compact, they are contracted, they are with each other, they are together, they are solid, they are rigid, there are still spaces in between them. And when we discuss about atoms, you'll realize that most of them are mostly empty spaces. Amazing. Alright, and the third one, no, the particles are in constant motion. So sabi ko nga, even though your table right now is not moving, you are being deceived. And dapat hindi ka ma-deceive because you are a chimek. Diba? Once you are a chimek, alam mo, the deep inside, nasa kaloob-looban niya, sa kaibuturan ng kanyang puso, kasi syempre buwan ng wika ngayon, no, gumagalaw siya. No? It's vibrating continuously. That's the movement of a solid. And then the last one, no, though I say will not elaborate, there are forces, no, between these particles that are holding them together, pushing them away, and so on and so forth, which we will elaborate later. Diba? Pag ganun si Sir Jello, ang haba na kasi ng book, takot magpagupit kasi baka makakuha ng COVID. Alright. We also answer this one. So, you may pause the video and try to answer this one again. And then you can go back to our recorded discussion to check if you got it right. Alright, pause mo muna ang video. Yan, nag-pause ako para sa mga hindi nag-pause. Sana nasagutan. So this is an exercise because you'll be having this in your summative as well. No? Very similar to this one. And as I've mentioned, the definite and indefinite could be replaced by variable or fixed rather, si definite. And si not definite is variable or changing. Yeah. Si high and low are also used or are also replaced by negligible and then significant. Alright. So, we also try to distinguish a matter and non-matter by using the definition. So, sabi ko nga, para malaman mo if a thing or a stuff is a matter or non-matter, you just need to ask two things. First, meron ba siyang mass? Meron ba siyang volume? Kapag wala na dun sa isa, technically it's a non-matter. So just to give a few example, si light, may mass ba? Can I weigh it? No, kasi associated si mass and weight, though they are not the same. Can I weigh it? No. So therefore, automatically it's a non-matter. So light doesn't matter. Kidding aside, it's a non-matter. A chalk, may mass naman siya. I can feel my volume. I can see the space occupied by the chalk. Therefore, it's a matter. And then you can answer the rest of this. Let me pause the video again. Or please pause the video again. Yan, nakapause tapos gumagalaw yung kortina sa likod. Right. Nilagyan ko kasi ng kortina kasi ang desktop nasa sala. Ano naman, Sir Jello? Share ko lang. Kala mo. Char. Alright. So, again, these are the three phases of matter, the most common. And again, this has been taught over and over again. However, in your senior high school, we introduced the most abundant element in the universe, no? And then the fifth na that can be hardly grasped. Medyo mahirap pa siyang intindihin. So we have the solid in a form of ice, liquid in a form of water, and then gas in a form of vapor or the air around us. So these are common example. And we thought that this is the most abundant, or these are the only three phases of matter. Now, even I realized the other forms of matter when I was in third year college. So I kept on thinking na tatlo lang yung phases of matter natin. Para I love you, diba? 3. Char. Now, how do we make or transform three phases of matter? Diba we have been taught in our junior high school the law of conservation of matter. That matter cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form to another. Therefore, transforming a solid to liquid entails a criteria or a specific criteria, and that is heat. Now, we apply heat to a solid to make it a liquid. Again, not all of the time, but most of the time, or in generally, that's how you create or transform a phase of matter to another state of matter. So, when you apply a solid, or yan, sa mga gamay na to, you can skip this part of the video, and then you can move forward to the classification, and then distinguishing changes in matter. Alright. So again, nag-break kasi ininit mo, naghiwa-hiwalay. It forms a liquid. And then, si liquid, pag ininit mo pa, it forms gas. No, hindi yun mga kaluluwa ng germs na namamatay, na nagbababay, di ba? Paano mamatay ng may style, ganun daw. Paano malunod pala ng may style. Brrr, brrr. Anyways, mukha ng tanga si Sir Jello. So, that's how you create a gas. Now, sabi ng nakadiscover ng plasma, I don't know who that man is, so sana wala na tayong discussion dito sa matter, hindi na siya uulitin kasi umay na ang mga estudyante at si teacher. Sabi niya, that's not yet the end. There's more. Di ba? Parang advertisement. What if I capture these gas molecules and try to hit them as high as possible? No, I bombard them with 1,000 degrees Celsius or more. That's how you create the lightsaber. Hindi pa pala, di ba? The question I asked this before, what will happen? Ano na yung maghihiwalay? the protons and electrons will separate from each other. Diba? Sorry palagi na lang naghiwalay Sir Zello. Bakit ganon? Palagi na lang. Diba? We behave as atoms. And atoms behave like us. So, kung naghihiwalay sila, maghihiwalay din kayo. Char lang. Sana hindi. No? Pero, though naghiwalay sila, sad yung isa, pero happy yung electrons kasi madaming electrons si proton, chick boy. So, happy yung mga girls na pinagsabay-sabay niya. No? So, boys, wag niyo yung gagawin para hindi kayo maghiwalay. Dapat, 1 proton, 1 electron lang. Ayan, char. Mostly, ganun naman pala. So, anyways, yan. Baka mamislead ko kayo. So, si proton and then electron, they separated. Babush! So, they become electrically charged because we know proton alone would be positive and electron alone would be negative. And they'll be excited because they are being bombarded continuously with heat. So, sobrang bilis nila, no? They become razor-like. No? They become very sharp. That's why, if you can see in a movie, if you've been hit by a plasma gun, it'll burst out. Because these are excited electrons moving. Gana sir ka excited. Ganyan. And then, ano pa? Yun, sa mga lasers, di ba? To cut something with precision. These are ionized atoms that are being used. No? And kapag nasunog ka, you are not actually being burned. These are the atoms cutting you. So, sana na-imagine nyo. Dapat ma-imagine nyo kasi tayo ay mga chimek! Alright. Rock and roll to the world. And scientists realize that this plasma or the fourth state of matter is the most abundant. And to be specific, or to give you an approximation, plasma is mostly the 99.9% of space, diba? Parang patay ang germs with safeguard. Diba? Kidding aside, since they realize that most of the universe is made up of stars, of the light, of aurora borealis, northern light, or technically just the stars. These are examples of plasma or ionized atoms, and this is the most abundant. So there you have it. The fourth state of matter. And please don't forget that because you've been seeing that many times, no? Naglilinaw ako pag white ang nasa PowerPoint. So, nagpuputi si Sir Jello. Yan. They are often taught before as a subset of gas kasi nga, they were created because of heating gas. However, it's another state of matter now, si plasma. And similar with gases, they have no fixed shape or volume. So, if you will notice, minsan sa lightsaber, di ba, parang may shape siya, cylindrical. But in reality, they do not acquire shape. Probably that's the container or the, and those are fictional, a bit fictional. So, they don't have shape. And, yan. They don't have fixed volume because, sabi nga, they are the subset of gas. So, yan. And then, they are less dense than solid or liquid, similar with the gas. Alright, what we have here on the third slide. Yan. As I mentioned, they are ionized because the electrons have been stripped away from their protons. So these are now single beings. No? From an atom with a proton and electron, naghiwalay sila. And then, this is the most common state of the universe. So this is the summary of what I've been seeing a while ago. So a repetition again. An example of plasma is the sun itself, and all the stars in the universe, no? Even you, because you are a star. Yeah, char lang. You're not a plasma. And then, yan, sa mga, party people, rookies, room 21, room 22, di talaga ako sure. And sa backdraft, di ba? Okay daw sa mga barabarangay lang, pag piyesta, sa basketball court, we have these party lights. So, these are examples of plasma. Now, sorry kung medyo mabilis. Yan, sana you are still with me. No, hindi nyo pa ini-end ang video. Kapag nandito pa kayo, congrats! Now, see, properties of matter naman. No, physical and chemical properties. And again, for some, probably this is just a review. So, bibilisan na lang natin. You've answered an activity to identifying physical and chemical properties of matter. When we say physical, we can observe this. without changing the identity of a substance. Common example, hindi prepared si Sir Jello. Papel. Diba? Shing! I tore the paper. No? Pinunit ko yung papel. Ano nang meron ako? Still a paper. Diba? Or meron na akong punit na papel. Diba? Mga pilosopong estudyante. Di mo na, sir, magagamit. Magagamit ko pa rin. So, yan. I changed its shape, probably, or rectangular pa naman. The size, no? So, size, I changed it, but the substance is not formed, diba? Sharon. So, therefore, the size is a physical property. Ano pa ang hindi nagbago dito? Nung pinunit ko ba, naging rough, or naging smooth, or naging rough pala kasi smooth siya? Nung pinunit ko? Hindi naman, di ba? So, a texture is a physical property. What else can you think? Ayan, kunwari, pinos ko yung video. So, isip ka muna. Later on, we'll identify some of the physical properties or common physical properties. On the other hand, chemical property naman describes the property when a substance undergo a change in identity. So, nagkaroon siya ng identity crisis. Halimbawa, sinunog ko to. Pero syempre, hindi ko susunugin kasi nasa bahay ako. What will happen if I burn down this paper? No? It will turn into ashes. No? It will form ashes at the same time. May small water precipitation. Also, it will create gas. So, there's a change in the identity. Next question, kapag tig-crumple ko siya, physical or chemical? Very good. Ang galing naman talaga. Very chemic. Physical siya because the shape changed but the substance is still the same. So, ganon. When identifying physical and chemical. So, let's have a few examples to make your brain work for a little moment. Sige. Take note of these examples kasi some are being repeated on exams. Some are being replaced with very few details. Sige. Melting point. What do you think? Is it a physical or chemical property? Sige, melting point. Halimbawa, a metal melts at 300 degrees Celsius. Ano siya? Physical, chemical property. Or an ice melts at around 40 degrees Celsius. So, melting point is a physical property. Right? Flammable or flammability. Is it a physical or a chemical property? So, kapag sinunog ko or kapag hinanap ko ang flammability, is combustible ba ang gas? So, yan. Since we are going to involve flame, technically, most of the time, it creates new substance. So, si flammability is a chemical property. Now, how about density? Sige nga. Is it a physical or a chemical property? So, si density, it's a physical property. No matter what you do to an object, halimbawa, bawasan mo man ang ice, maliit or malaki man yan, hindi magbabago ang kanyang density. Parang it's something that is natural to an object. It's inherited. You cannot change it or modify it. The density of an object will remain the same forever. Yeah, sana all may forever. Magnetic property. Kasi magnetic property is physical, tarnishes with air, common, tarnishes or tinatakla, rusting, or nag-change ng color. These are the same. Chemical. So let's have some an elaborate definition of the physical. So I don't have a presenter view here. So sometimes I am surprised with my own PowerPoint. So si physical change, there's no change in identity. Probably may change ang form in terms of shape, size, and volume, but the identity doesn't change. So hindi siya nagbabago. Sana all. Diba? And then the properties remains the same. On the other hand, si chemical, there's a change in identity of substance. And as I said a while ago, like burning paper, there are products that have been formed. Gas, precipitate, common yan, or water, moist, and then, yan, a new substance. So, usually, ang byproduct kapag sinusunog is carbon dioxide in the form of gas and water. H2O, because you are consuming oxygen. But that's a separate topic. And then some signs of chemical change. No? Usually, but not all, but there are always exceptions to the rule. Change in color or odor. Halimbawa, ang pako na seemingly silver, ang kulay, tinakla, sorry kung baka may hindi nakakaintindi ng Bicol. So, rusting of iron or nails, there's a change in color. Or silver, nag-tarnish, so there's a change in color, you cannot return it, no? And there's a change in identity. So another pala indication, if you can return it to its original identity, you can consider it physical. Alam ba, sinunog mo yung papel, si Ash, kaya mo bang gawing papel ulit? Ching, nag-isip ka pa, no? Syempre, it's difficult, or it's almost impossible. But in Chemic, walang imposible. Sige, medyo napapagod na ako. Mahirap pala mag-commentator sa lecture discussion. Anyways, there's a formation of gas, mostly in a form of H2O. And usually kapag you are burning something, there's a combustion. And then, formation of precipitate or solid. Ang very good example nito, if I can remember it correctly, milk na nagpapaanos. No? May mga precipitate or solid, if you'll notice, but don't waste your milk just to prove this experiment. But for the sake of knowledge, you can do that. No? That's why it's advisable that you don't, after opening a can of milk, a condensed or evap, more particularly evap milk, you transfer it to a non-metal container and you refrigerate it to minimize the time it will take to change, no, or mapainos, or chemical change. And then there's a change in light or heat. These are some indicators of a chemical change. Sige. Let's try to identify some, if it's a physical or a chemical change. Kasi rusting of iron. Ulit-ulit na to, umay. Syempre, sir, chemical change. Pero may nag-isip pa dyan physical. No? Again, repetition. Diba? Law of St. Ignatius of Loyola. Repetitio. In education din, law of practice and law of exercise. Exercise, jumping jack. Yan. Pampagising lang mga pinagagawa ko, wag niyo akong i-judge. So baka kasi naboboard kayo. Yan. Hindi niyo napapansin, mahaba na yung video. So let's continue. No? Bear with me. Pogi naman yung nasa screen, di ba? Anyways, dissolving something in water. Sige nga. Is it a physical or chemical? Okay, isipin. No? Kung walang isip, magpanggap na nag-iisip. Kasi ang mga estudyante naman, nagpapanggap lang matuto. Ang mga teacher, nagpapanggap magturo. So, sa mundo ng pagpapanggap, galingan mo ang pagpapanggap. And that is physical. So, na-distract ka, no? Hindi ka nakapag-isip kasi nag-philosophize si sir. So, dissolving water is an example of a physical change. Because, on the later part of our lectures, no, you'll do love at home. That you'll return something that you dissolved in water. Through a process, a specific laboratory process. And then burning a log. Very bookish na example. No? Pagsusunog ng puno o pangangaingin. Sige nga, physical or chemical? Diba? Sometimes, if there's a burning, or most of the times, pag may burning or combustion na involved, chemical property siya. Melting ice. Of course, it's physical. Grinding something into pieces. Diba? Or chopping meats. Physical or chemical siya. So, you change the identity, or you change the shape, or the size, but it's still a meat. No? That is physical. So, ganon. Nagbago ba yung identity niya? If yes, that's chemical. If not, that's physical. So, that's how you identify the properties of matter. Now, in senior high school, we'll try to make it deeper. No? In a physical property, there is such thing as another classification which we call the intensive or extensive property. And I'll repeat it, sa physical property lang siya. So halimbawa, dito sa examples, grinding pieces, physical siya. So we'll find some little or sub-properties here that we can identify. Like when we grind something, ano ba yung nagbabago physically? So, si shape, si texture, ano pa? So, these things, no, we can identify them as intensive or extensive. Now, since this is probably a new topic for you, probably because of the activity you have searched, you have watched YouTube videos, or you have looked into books or references explaining the difference between the two. Medyo pinagpapawisan na ako. As intensive, ganito lang. Nasa panloob mo siya. So, kahit anong baguhin sa'yo, outside, no, hindi yun magbabago. Parang, it's inert inside you. Like, mahirap kasi pala pag sa tao. So, no matter how many of that thing is, or how much many or how much of that thing is, that property, if it's intensive, if it's inside that thing, or if it's within that thing, it will not change. However, sa extensive property, it depends on the number. So, to technically differentiate them, intensive property does not depend on the amount. So, let me repeat that again. Intensive property does not depend on the amount, while extensive property always depends on the amount of something. So, again, I can keep on defining them, but let's put it into practice, no? Kasi knowledge has no value until we put it into practice. Shara, that's from Martin Luther King. Now, water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. So, in a sentence like this one, what are we going to identify? No? First, we identify what property are we referring to. So, though, hindi dito in-specify kasi kanina phrases and words. Dito sentence na, freezes. So, we are talking about the freezing point. So, si freezing point ba? Physical or chemical property? Since we're talking about intensive and extensive, and when something freezes, usually the identity does not change, it's physical. Now, we have to identify if it's ano nga yan? Naglag si sir. Intensive or extensive. And as I said, intensive does not depend on the amount. While sa extensive, it depends on the amount of an object. Alright. So, if something freezes, or ganito na lang, to always check if it's an intensive or extensive, give 2 examples. 1 glass of water, 1 pail of water. Are the freezing points of these two different or the same? Kasi they differ in amount. Diba? Ulitin ko, isang basong tubig at isang balde ng tubig, magkaiba ba ang freezing point? Now, be careful here. Because your mind would tell you, yes, because mas malamig or mas madaling manigas yung konti. And then, matagal yung madami. Tama naman yon. That's a common sense. However, we are talking about the freezing point, meaning the temperature it will take or the temperature needed for it to freeze. So therefore, no matter how small or how large your water is, all molecules of water will freeze at 0 degrees Celsius. Therefore, freezing point is extensive or intensive. If you still answer extensive, you're quite confused. No, you're still confused. But if you answer intensive, very good. No? Sana maging consistent as we proceed. Oily na ako. Let me retouch a little. Cheng, magic pulbo. Magic panyo. Alright. So, si water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. So, they will freeze at the same time or at the same freezing point no matter how many or how much the amount is. Therefore, freezing point is an intensive property because it does not depend on the amount. Next example. No. In the sentence here, sige nga, basahin mo Ikaw, yes. Pagod na si sir. Yan, kunwari nabasa mo na. So, what are we looking at here? Now, what property are we referring to? So, we are referring to the weight because we have here the kilogram. So, you can disregard everything. Is weight dependent on the amount or not? So, ganun na lang yung tanong mo. Is weight dependent on the amount or not? So, technically, kapag mas madami, mas mabigat. 'Di ba? Though minsan may mga isa lang pero mas mabigat sa madami. Joke lang, huwag kang ma-offend. Mataba rin si Sir Jello and we are healthy. We are beautiful. You're all beautiful. Kidding aside, no, technically, mas madami, mas mabigat. So, since it depends, or weight depends on the amount, therefore, weight is an extensive property. So, yan. For sure, nakukuha mo na. Kung mali ka pa rin, don't worry. I still have examples for you. Yan. Aluminum is a good conductor of heat. So, conductivity. What do we mean by conductivity? The ability for heat and electricity to flow to a certain thing. So, question mo na naman dito, ano ba yung mga example ng bagay na conductor of heat or electricity? Metal. Sige, isang pako ba at isang mahabang kabilya or rod, a metal rod, magkaiba ba ang conductivity nila? Sige nga. If you answer yes, kasi mas mahaba yon, you're wrong. Conductivity is always the same for every substance. No? Therefore, conductivity is an intensive property. It does not depend on the amount. Kapag bakal yan, bakal yan. Diba? Kapag bato yan, patal yan. Si Senator Bato. Tsaka recorded pala to, baka makasuhan tayo. May bill na. Pero yan, kidding aside, conductivity is an intensive property. Sige, mercury, bisay ka dong. Mercury is a liquid at a room temperature. Namoy ko na kasi ang luto ni Mama. So, it's 6. Gutom na ako. And mercury is liquid at room temperature. Sige, meaning, yung state niya in a specific temperature. Intensive or extensive? Sige. So, madami bang mercury? Nag-iiba ba ang state niya compared sa konti? At a certain temperature? Of course not. No? Malaking thermometer, maliit na thermometer, mercury is still in a liquid form. So it does not depend on the amount at a room temperature. Therefore, the state of mercury here with regards to the temperature is an intensive property. It does not change because we simply change the amount. Sige. How about the 1 foot of yarn is equivalent to 12 inches of thread? We are referring to the length. Kapag ba mahaba or madami or yan, I increase the amount, magiging mas mahaba siya. So technically, yes. So length is extensive property. Sige, let me again, repetition, sana hindi kayo nauumay. Intensive properties are the values or have the values that do not depend on the amount of matter. For example, a small ice cube might have the same temperature as a massive iceberg because they freeze at the same time. So, alam mo, sobrang lamig nung iceberg, pero pag humawak ka sa yelo, maliit na ice cube, that's how cold an iceberg is. Yeah. Nagkataon lang na si common sense natin, parang iba ang pinapa-feel sa atin. But that's an intensive property. On the other hand, literal, na extensive property, left and right, to the left, to the right, bagal kasi ng transition. So, have values that do depend on the amount of the sample. So, syempre, if we are going to talk about the size, si ice cube is smaller than an iceberg. Therefore, size is an extensive property because it depends on the amount. Alright. So, let's have a quick exercise. PE major ka, sir. Sige. Exercise. Boiling point. Intensive, extensive. You can pause the video. Pero nagpo-pause man ako kasi kailangan ko din magpahinga. So, boiling point is an intensive property. Yay! Because a cup of water and a pail of water will boil at the same time. Not at the same time, but at the same boiling point. No? That's 100 degrees Celsius. They will boil if they reach that temperature. Alright. Volume. Ano si volume? Hindi yung sa TV na lalakasan mo yung the space occupied. Pag mas madami ba, always ask, mas malaki yung volume niya or mas maliit? Or magbabago ba pag dinagdagan mo? Yan. Dinagdagan mo yung object, nagbago ba ang volume niya? If the answer is yes, that is extensive property because it depends on the amount. Similarly, in the mass, No? If you add something, will the mass change? Yes or no? Yeah, very good. Ang galing mo talaga. Isa kang chimek. The mass changes because you added something or you added a substance, you added more or an amount or you decrease. Hindi lang pala dumadagdag basta you change the amount. It depends on the amount. If it changes, now that's an extensive property. And yan. Density is intensive because it's inert and conductivity is intensive. Alright, very good. Ulitin na naman natin. Amount of matter. Yan. 3 times repeated or 4. Hopefully, you've mastered it. So, we're here now in a summary of the properties of matter. Let me remove my face here because it's So, properties of matter in general. So, tapos na tayo sa states, sa properties. We have 2. No? Physical and chemical. Yan. Si physical properties, no, some which we did not discuss already. Si color, kahit hati-hatiin mo yung table mo, pero wag mong gagawin, wag mong chop-chopin, the color of your table will remain the same, no? Anong kulay man yan. Melting point, boiling point, density. While sa extensive, halos magkakapamilya naman sila. So, mass, volume, length, and shape. These are your extensive properties. Properties that depends on the amount. Very good. Now, for the last topic, hopefully you're still with me. No, ito yung problem nga sa online class kasi ayan, you have to watch some videos. You have to bear with me. And yan, sana nga may nakakausap ako ngayon, 'di ba? Kasi may lamok na dumaan, and kinuha ako. Yan. Matter or non-matter? Syempre matter kasi may mass and volume. Yan, nababaliw na ako. And I'm trying my best. Ewan ko kung nababaduyan kayo or nawiwirdohan na sa akin. Papansinan man ni Sir Jello. I'm just trying to wake you up. Since if you're still here, no? If you're still here or kung may mga nakakapanood man nito, sana malaman yung mahal na mahal ko kayo. Char lang. And thank you if you're still here. So we are on our last objective. So isang chapter, no? Supposedly for 3 to 4 weeks. Tapos natin for the 3rd week. So later pwede na tayong mag-quiz if ma-master na to. So si changing form, no? Supposedly may laro dito. Pero hindi na natin naabot. I think we cannot do that anymore. So very simple lang. Once a solid transform into liquid, we call it a melting. No? Common example, ice being turned to water. Similarly, meron ding iba, like metal mercury being a mercury liquid in at room temperature. Meron ding ano pa mga example ng mga natutunaw. A gold, for a very few seconds, if you melt it, it becomes in a liquid form, by adding heat. Diba? On the other hand, way back, si freezing, from liquid to solid, freezing. No? Pero naghihiro kaya ang kortina, so, yan, epic. So, freezing. Diba? Pag inapod ka ni sir, di ka nakasimbag, freezing. Char lang. Or pag nahiling mo si ngirit ni Sir Jello, na melting. Diba? Pugiong ka, sir. Anyways, that's freezing. Common. Now, eto, minsan nababaliktad, solid to gas. So, there are examples. Sige, can you think of example of matter from solid changing to gas? Very good, no? Common example natin, mothballs. Diba? Or alcampur, mas familiar, I think. Or, ito yung sa CR, itong mga mahamot, albatross. Yeah, because I'm an albatross. Yan. Diba? They do not undergo transformation from solid to liquid. They automatically turn from solid to gas. And that's what we call sublimation. In chemistry, meron din mga specific yan like si ice, dry ice, turning into a carbon dioxide and so on and so forth. Pero dun tayo sa mga common. As I can remember, sa expectations, dapat relevant ang subject. So, sa household, alcampur, yan. May naghapot din, Sir Katol. Diba? Solid nagiging gas. Pero may ashes duman. Hindi ko yan malilingawan. So, it's not technically sublimation. So, dapat itong kusang natutunaw lang siya without other form. Automatically nagiging siyang gas. Now, how about the other hand? No, from a gas going to solid? No. Some of you probably know it. Ngunya, naghahalat yung iba, nag-aantay ngayon ng sagot. So, the answer for that is, hindi pa pala, char lang. Liquid to gas muna, that's vaporization. So, if you hit a liquid, no, may mga usok pataas, the gas, na hindi yun makakaluluwa ng namatay na germs. And those are the gases that are being vaporized, and which we usually call liquid vapor. And then going back, that's gas to liquid, that's condensation. Yan. So kanina, yung question ko, si gas to solid is a deposition. So I failed to give an example here here in the gas to liquid. Pero I think common naman, pag nainit mo na yon, tataas sa langit, hindi na sa langit, sa atmosphere, lalamig, will form clouds. And then, the clouds will technically become water, no? It will condense into water. So, it becomes a liquid. Si gas to solid, we call it deposition. No? From a gas, you create a solid. A deposition ang tawag. Now, we will add a little more. No? The fourth state of matter. Si Plamsa. Ngayon ko lang na-realize, Plamsa pala. Sino-check ko lang, nagbabasa ka. Kung na-notice mo yon. Pero hindi, no? Kasi sa akin ka nakatutok. Kasi pogi si Sir Jello. Ayan. Si plasma. Si plasma, yan, si plasma nawala ako. Dito pa rin, hindi ako aalis. Char. Si plasma, from gas to plasma, we call it ionization. But very simple lang. We remove the electron from a proton. Technically, we ionize them. We make them charged particles. That's the term for ionization. The process itself is called ionization. Now, question. What do you think is the process of returning the charged particles into a neutral atom, or technically making a plasma into a gas form? So, ibabalik mo. Yan. Any word? Ching, 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 ching. And the term is recombination. So, you recombine them. You combine them again. So, ibabalik mo si electron. Sige na, duman ka na sa proton mo. Kasi, day na ako bitter. Subago, pigpaparapa, suwayan ko ka mo. Subago, sabi ko, mahiwalay ka mo dae. Magpadangatan ka mo. So, you can become a gas once again. That's from plasma to a gas. No? So, technically, yan. Question. Ay, mayo na. Yan. Question. Ano na, wala si sa wrong slide, si last slide. Sorry. So, yan. If you'll create a ladder, sige, sana, yan. Bear with me. This will be the last slide. So, I want to give you a challenge. Hindi ko pala na-include dito yung kanina. Sige. Huwag nyo na lang akong i-judge. Ano ba maganda dito? Or sa paint na lang. Hopefully, you can still see my screen. Mas madali mag-ano sa paint. Alright. Yan. Hindi painter si Sir Jello. So, yan. From solid, turning to liquid, turning to gas, and then turning to plasma. Diba? The rule is, you increase the heat, or the technical term here is the entropy of the system. So let me write it here. The entropy. Entropy. Yan. Sorry sa surat. Or the heat in the system, diba? Increase the heat, you form liquid, you form gas, you form plasma. And then, if you do it the other side, di ko na isusulat, going down, you decrease the heat, a plasma will turn into gas. A gas will become a liquid, and a liquid will become a solid. Now, there are shortcuts. No? A solid can become a gas. Diba? Ano ang tawag doon? Sublimation. Very good. And a gas can become solid once again. And what do we call it? No, deposition. So again, let me place some arrows here para ma-emphasize ko din na vice versa sila. So liquid going to gas is vaporization, gas to liquid, condensation. Hopefully you can follow. Solid to liquid, melting, liquid to solid, freezing. So this is the pattern. Now, ito yung I've been researching for quite some time now, pero I haven't seen any attempts or probably meron I've missed out siguro, no? This is the challenge I want to leave with you. If you believe with me that we can create a shortcut from liquid to plasma, no, that's how wonderful the universe is, no? Seemingly impossible at the moment. But do you think it's possible? Diba? Before, no one believed that we can create a gas out of a solid and vice versa. But since somebody created it, the impossible became possible. Diba? The word itself, pinatay ko lang yung lamok, hindi ako nagpalakpak. I am possible. So, this becomes revolutionary and we took this for granted. But to mind you again, this was not yet the case before. Ang alam lang natin, solid, liquid, gas, gas, liquid, solid. Solid, liquid, gas, gas, liquid, solid. But we can have solid to gas and vice versa. Now, this is a challenge. No, this is not an assignment. Don't worry. This is not a project. But I do believe that learning is a lifelong process. Even I graduated, I'm still thinking about this. And maybe I'm not destined to be the one to win the Nobel Prize. But if you think you can create a liquid out of a plasma or a plasma out of a liquid without going to the gas state, para lang akong bata na naglaro sa paint, that could win you a Nobel Prize. That could probably change the world. And if you would explore more, in your college, you'll meet super solid, super liquids, and the rest of the 18, if I'm not mistaken, or 9, baka exage na si 18, phases of matter. No? You can check the Bose-Einstein condensate if we can place it into the picture. Because Einstein, Stephen Hawking, and some of the known scientists believe that there's a theory of everything. Everything is interrelated and everything is connected. And don't worry, though everything changes, no, ang pagkatuto hindi magbabago. We'll keep on learning. And I think that's enough for this session. Sorry sa mga dramahan, sorry sa mga kalokohan. Hopefully you learned something, and that's the entirety of things about matter. That's it. Thank you, Sir Jello. Thank you, mga Chimek. Peace out.